Hello everybody, it's Lemmy here, and I'm working on another model. This one is 3D printed, so I don't know how much people have seen. I haven't exactly done like a showcase video on these models I've been working on, but I've been making 3D printed wooden railway models that kind of have the ideal shape for what I like in these characters. So like the thing about the standard wooden railway models is that they're mostly based off of the TV series, which I love, but it's not how I envision the characters. I mean, I envision Gordon a lot closer to an A1, and James closer to a class 28, and Henry closer to a black 5. That's kind of how I picture all these characters. And Wooden Railway just doesn't really go for that. It's kind of trying to do a simplified version of the television series. And so Gordon's a lot more bulbous, and James is shorter, and just everybody looks more TV series oriented. So I wanted to kind of create models that gave off more of the Railway series energy, and I've been doing that for years. Everybody's seen, a little bit of that here and there. I'd say I think I've done 4 different kind of idealized Gordon models now, and I've slowly been refining how to make that happen. For instance, I've got Gordon right here, and he's finished. I put a picture on Twitter today. Also, in the layout video I did with Dustin, Rudy Productions, he shows up in that. But you can see the shape is very different from a typical wooden railway engine, but it's got the kind of the A1 proportions that I'm so fond of. It's got that big kind of powerful tapered boiler. It's got the big driving wheels in the center. And I tried to keep it within the realm of wooden railway, so you'll look at that and you'll notice that he's got he's still got the kind of chunky running board. He's still got, only 8 wheels, but they're more carefully chosen wheels. So they're not all the same size, You get kind of the sense that there's a pony truck back here and up front. You've got it's a pretty simple shape, but it took a very long time to figure out how to capture Gordon's energy in such a simple shape. Because, to make something look natural with wooden railway models, you've got to simplify it quite a lot. I've seen people take, say, a take and play engine and put it on a wooden railway chassis, and while that looks really cool, it also is different from what you kind of expect from wooden railway as a style. And I kind of wanted to design something that fit right in, but also captures the energy of the real engines. That you look at that, because if you looked at the shape of Gordon, you wouldn't be able to guess what class he was. Like the typical wooden railway Gordon. He could be anything as long as it was like a big tender engine. He could be a princess class. He could be like a black 5 almost. It's hard to guess what he would be. But looking at this, I feel like a railway enthusiast who doesn't know much about Thomas could look at the shape of this engine and probably guess that it was an A3. And that's kind of what I'm going for. So I want it to bring the real class to mind while also not breaking the boundaries of wooden railway too much. I mean, don't get me wrong, they would never make this. Like, Wooden Railway would not bother making such a complex tapered boiler shape, and there's a lot of things about that. I'll go into it at some point probably, but there's a lot about this design style that I doubt Wooden Railway would ever greenlight. But at the same time, it fits in with the existing models. You look at this next to, say, Thomas, because I'm leaving Thomas unmodified. I'll go crazy if I redo everybody. So, the traditional Wooden Railway old-style Thomas, I like him a lot. The only reason I made him in this software, in SketchUp, is because I wanted to be able to, I'm stuck inside of Gordon, is to reference, kind of get a size reference, right, and get a sense of, okay, well, the running board is however tall it's supposed to be, So that's really the only reason I did that. But you can see they scale in a very satisfying way. Gordon's a lot bigger. And, of course, it's not the way the real engines would be exactly. I mean, Thomas would scale more like this in a perfect world. But I still think you look at the two of them, you look at especially the center of mass of the face. I think that makes a huge difference. Look at how low Thomas's face is compared to Gordon's. He's always looking down at him. That's what we want, especially if you frame the shot like this, So anyway, this is a very satisfying design to me, and they're all like this. So I've done at this point I've done Edward, Henry, Gordon, James, and Thomas. Of course, is already he already exists. I'm just using the same one I used for the Farquhar axe. And pretty much this I've got the first 5 now, which is really cool. So anyway, the reason I'm doing this video today is to talk about what I'm doing next. I'm making an Alfred, because I love Alfred, and we're getting into the Halloween season now. I figure Alfred has a good kind of villainous kind of Halloween vibe. Sodor Dark Times was probably the biggest creative influence on me out of all Thomas fan films I've ever seen. I saw it when I was maybe 11, and it just shook my world to see such a daring kind of take, where they killed off characters but did it in a meaningful way. That film probably single-handedly made Gordon my favorite character, just because of how it introduced the idea to me that Gordon had a sense of responsibility and that he was the patriarch of his family. And seeing how he reacts to, I don't want to spoil it in case anybody still hasn't seen it, because I know there's some kids watching this who haven't seen Sodor Dark Times yet. It's a dark take. It's pretty extreme, but I recommend it. It's really powerful. And I mean, there's a lot of people that have done interesting things with Alfred, and he's done the rounds across the whole community as a character, which I'm glad about, because he deserves it. And that, I think, is the highest honor for a fan character. I don't know how Richard Jordan feels about it. I'm sure his feelings are probably mixed, but I would say that I'm very grateful to him for having created this character, and now I want to create a physical representation of him, because he's just very cool. He's one of the best villains Thomas has ever had, and so I want to make a model of him. And I tried my best to capture Alfred's shape, the shape of the B12, because I love how the B12s look. They've got this really neat look where, they're some of the only 4.60s that look elegant. Most of them look strong. Most of them look powerful. You look at the Great Western 4.60s, you look at the LMS 4.60s. I mean, don't get me wrong, they are beautiful, but they're beautiful in a way that embodies strength. They're very angular. And the thing about the B12s is they're very LNER, I mean, even though they predate the LNER by quite a ways, they have that kind of northeastern look, and I love it. I love how sleek they are. This thing that happens with the big driving wheels back here, and then the running board slopes up, slopes back down, and then it's great. I could talk about it all day. So within my existing design style, I did my best to kind of capture this engine. He's the only one here. Now he's one of the few engines here that has this exact wheel arrangement. With the bigger engines, you can't really do that. It'd be Gordon would be a pain on curves if he had the right number of wheels. So I just minimized him to 8. Henry has 8, but Alfred has all 10 wheels. But I think it works because he's got very like if you put this pony truck on the front of Gordon, he would look too long. It would be like half of his length would be pony trucks. And the thing about the A3s is, yes, they have 6 supporting wheels in addition to the 6 driving wheels, but the 6 supporting wheels are very small and don't take up much of the overall length. Whereas with Alfred, he's got very small driving wheels, relatively speaking, and his pony wheels are small, but they're spread out and they take up a lot of the overall length. So it's about 2/5 of his length is dedicated to his front pony truck. So this, to me, looks quite a lot like the actual engine. I feel like it doesn't throw off the length too much to have the right number. He is pretty big. He's probably bigger than he should be, but the beauty of having all of these in a computer is that I can just hold them up next to each other and say, okay, well, put him next to Henry, and he's the same length as Henry. And very importantly, Henry is a bit taller. So you can see, even though Alfred has a bigger face, Henry's face is higher up, so he can kind of look down at him. Again, I think that the thing about Wooden Railway is pretty much everything is roughly the same size. There's not huge scaling differences because everything has to fit through the same tunnels. And so, as a result, the thing you really have to bank on is the stature of the engine. That's what I've realized about designing wooden railway models, is that if you want an engine to look taller than another engine, don't look at the overall height, look at where the face is, because this makes Henry look taller, even though he's really, the cab heights aren't that different. It's the fact that his face is positioned higher up. So to me, that's kind of what matters. And likewise, Gordon is just huge and towers over his peers because he's got a bigger face, and most importantly, the center of his face is much higher. I mean, you drag it over to like where Henry's is. I mean, look at that. Look at that. That's the contrast with Edward's, so he towers over him. And I love that. And that's something that typical wooden railway models don't really do, because they're more limited. I mean, Gordon and Henry here literally have, I did this thing where the running board swoops up, and they're literally like a whole running board's height higher than an engine like James or Edward or Thomas, and I think that adds a lot. And Alfred is kind of in between, because his running board does that back here, but up here his face is closer to the running board like Edward or James. But it's a good balance, I think. I haven't designed the tender yet, but it's going to be pretty easy. So yeah, I'm very pleased with this. I'm in the middle right now of actually breaking him up, and I've actually already broken them up. Now I just have to slice everything. So here, I think I already did the boiler, and so I already did that. I already did the smoke box. I think I've done the faceplate already, and this gives you an insight into how these models are made. No, I haven't done the faceplate yet. So Alfred _ faceplate. For some reason, it's satisfying for me to format things that way. Just looks nice with the underscore. Makes me feel all professional. So you can see I slowly work. I don't know what this is. Get rid of that. I slowly work my way through all the parts, and I have to explode it first, because if I don't do that, then there's going to be hell to pay. All I mean by that is Cura. Oh wait, hold on. I have to open my software. So Cura Ultimaker is what I use. Ultimaker, Cura, whatever. I don't know what it's called. That software is what I use for slicing all of my files. And so if I don't explode the file first in SketchUp, it's not going to recognize it. So it's a pretty straightforward process, at least the way that I do it. I know that you can get way more technical with 3D printing. There's like a lot I don't know. And frankly, maybe one day I'll learn the ins and outs, but for now I just know just enough about it to get by, and I really enjoy it. It's like, there was a time where I was very frustrated with the concept of 3D printing, because on one hand I knew it would save me a lot of time, but on the other hand I had spent years and years getting good at building things with my own two hands. And I was very proud of the fact that I could do that. And I still can, of course. I built that Big Mac recently, which was almost entirely scratch built. Only a few little fiddly details were 3D printed. And I take a great deal of pride in my ability to do that. And so the realization that a machine could do it for me, essentially, was a little bit humiliating, But, of course, that's something I had to get over. Technology marches on, and hopefully we're all the better for it. And people have done tremendous things with 3D printing. I have a lot of friends that have just blown it out of the water. And, I thought it was about time I joined them. So now, Alfred Pony Wheel. So now, I use 3D printing heavily. I mean, when I moved across the country, I could only fit so much stuff in my car, and one of those things was my disassembled 3D printer. I lugged it across the whole country, and I set it up the day I got here because it is an invaluable tool. But it took me a while to admit that, I didn't really want to give up on the old methods. And I haven't, but the thing is, I kind of have given up on making wooden railway engines from scratch with cardboard, I don't really do that anymore because this is so much easier, it's quicker, and I don't have as much time as I used to. I mean, I still got a lot of time, but it's more limited, and I'm using all of it. So the faster I can do things, spacer, there we go. The faster I can do things, the better. You might be wondering what this is. So This is a new scale of wheel I've created, a new size. Wooden Railway has 3 sizes, traditionally. It's got the regular size that's on Thomas. It's got the bigger size that's on Big City Engine that very upsettingly has counterweights on it, even though they're never going to line up, and it's very frustrating. And then there's the biggest size, which is on Emily and Molly for some reason. And so I created a size smaller than the Thomas size, which I promised myself I would never do because I knew it was a can of worms, but I think I've been using it responsibly so far. I've only been using it on characters that look weird without it. So like Edward is a character that I haven't been able to kind of figure out for a very long time. But you can see like on my new Edward, he's got 2 different sizes of wheels, and I think that looks natural for him. Might be a little different than what you're used to. That's because he's really very heavily modeled after a K2, which doesn't look like the TV series model and does not look like the illustrations. It's literally just in People, History, and Railways. It says Edward's a K2. He worked on the Furness Railway, and I love that. I ran with that because, K2s and their general design, that was an extremely prolific type of engine in the late 1800s. Like, that embodies the late 1800s. Not the K2 specifically, but there's like 10 or 20 classes from different railways all across the country that all look exactly like the K2. It's an extremely common look. It's the equivalent of like the American 440s with the big diamond stacks, like what Bo is based on. Like those. Like, imagine you wanted an old-fashioned engine character in an American series, right? Like, you're doing a story about American engines, you would pick one of those, from the Old West. Well, Edward is that for Britain. So I think, it's really cool that instead of just having him look like James with a different wheel arrangement, because that's kind of what the show does, he just kind of looks like James but with different wheels, you make him look very different, very old-fashioned. You look at him next to all these engines, and you see the really tall funnel, you see the old fenders on the wheels, you see the open cab, and you think, wow, okay, that guy's a lot older than the others, and it's that's his character. So I think it's really cool to incorporate that. And again, that's something I couldn't do with the standard Wooden Railway models. I had to build my own. Anyway, all this to say, that's why I needed to create this wheel size, is primarily for Edward, but it's been useful on other engines too. It's going to be useful on Alfred, and I think that anyway, the thing is. In order to space the wheel from the chassis, it needs a little spacer here, which is what this is. So this goes onto the back of this. And I tapered the end so that this is the side that butts up against the chassis, and it doesn't catch as easily because it's got that tapering effect. Because otherwise you've got this flat surface. If there's even a little bit of an imperfection, it might catch on the side of the chassis and the wheel will stop, and it's very dissatisfying. So I tapered the end of it. I beveled it, really, is what you should say. I beveled it. And then I just glue these back to back, and then the axle goes through this and into the wheel, and then there's a spacer there, so the wheels don't shift left to right. They just stay where they're supposed to be. I used to do that by rolling a piece of cardboard around the middle of the axle in between the 2 sides of the chassis, because the chassis was hollow, and I could open it up and put the wheels in, but that's not how Wooden Railway does it. I mean, the chassis is a solid block of wood in Wooden Railway. You can't put anything in there. So this is my solution now. Much closer to what Wooden Railway did. I wish I could print it all as one piece, but this is a really great flat surface to print the wheel on. And this, of course, would interrupt that. So that's why I print them separately. It's easier. I'm sure there's a way to print it all together, but I haven't bothered figuring it out. This is simpler for me. Maybe at some point I will, but yeah, I mean, it's, here, let's see. So we've got the spacer. Okay. And now, and that's the thing about 3D printing parts, is it's really key to print them all, in very specific ways. So let's call that Alfred. See, I can't call that, I guess, because I already have the chassis, right? So the Alfred, what is this? I guess that's chassis rear. And we'll call that chassis front. But yeah, you want to print stuff in a stable way, right? So you want to pick a really flat surface. Like this is the most dubious part I'm going to be printing, the body, because I'm printing it on its side, right? This is going to be the part that touches the glass, you know, the print bed, and that means that this whole area here is not going to be supported. But also it's a slope, so it will slowly build up, right? It'll print all this, then it'll print this layer, that layer, that layer, that layer, and eventually build its way up until it's to the center, and everything after that is going to be easy. This is the really dubious part, is there's nothing supporting this. So it's going to be going straight up. Imagine this is all tipped sideways for a second. I think there's a way to do that, but I don't want to mess up the orientation of how to look at this. But this is not going to be supported at all. That's going to be facing the bottom, and it's just going to jut out. So I'm going to have to cut off a lot of the drip that comes off of that, because God knows it's going to, you know, it's going to be really messy. But I think I can get away with it. If not, I'll redesign it. I'll have this be a part that slots on after the fact if I have to. You know, oftentimes I do second or third passes on these things. So, you know, it doesn't matter that much. And like I said, I mean, I'm not obsessive about this. I mean, I kind of can't afford to be, because I'm so obsessive about anything if I let myself kind of approach life that way. So I try to be very nonchalant. All right. Okay, so that should be all the parts. Now we're going to go into Cura, and we're going to start doing this. So start with the body. And we've got it on 12 millimeters. The infill's at 20%. It's kind of light, actually. How much of a difference does 40 make? Wow, hold on a minute. So that's 3 hours versus 2 hours. You see, that makes a huge difference. But he'll probably be a little heavier if the infill is higher. Yeah, what the hell, we'll just do 3 hours. Assuming, of course, that it's even going to come out correctly. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. So, here, I need to get the USB stick. Ceilings are bloody low in this place. There's this like fan in my in the hallway, and no, I don't want to scan and fix. There's actually nothing wrong with it. There's this fan in the hallway that I have to jump over, and apparently it's a very delicate game going over the fan but not hitting your head on the ceiling. Ugh, it's easier for Dustin. I'm a tall fucker. Alright. So there we go. So that's all there is to it. And you'll notice, like, it's not giving me any error message. There's nothing really wrong with this. We'll see if any of these parts, if there's anything wrong with any of them, because it'll tell us. Now we got this. I'm going to sand the boiler pretty heavily. Not even so much to get rid of these. Like, that's why I'm not too worried about, you know, you'll notice these kind of vertical lines, you know, from where the polygons meet. I'm not too worried about that, because I'm going to be sanding it pretty heavily anyway to get rid of the layer lines, because there's going to be rings around this whole thing because it prints layer by layer. So I'm going to be doing a lot of sanding anyway. And again, I'm not too meticulous about it. I'm more concerned with conveying an idea here. You know, I want to do interesting things with shape and form. That's really why I do this. And I think that, you know, getting like, because the thing is, if you're doing like a replica, then, like, say you're doing a replica of Thomas from the TV series, then, you know, you want to make it look as close as possible. But with this, it's already deliberately stylized. So what people are looking at isn't the finish, you know. Damn, is that really does make it. Wait, well, that doesn't really. So that's an hour 36 versus hour 54. That's not a huge difference. I'll just print it with more infill. I don't even understand. I'm just assuming what these, you know, what these settings do. Just based on, you know, what I've printed already and how well it's turned out. Like, nobody explained any of it to me. I just was like, okay, well, this turned out better than this. I'm going to do that next time. Okay. So 3 minutes. That's merciful. All right, that's the funnel. And these are on pretty much the most refined setting that I have available to me. See, that right there. I mean, I don't think that's going to be a problem because I've printed the same wheel so many times, but that indicates that there are errors. See, like that blue and purple kind of thing. Typically, what that means is that I didn't delete the inner wall where that meets that. There shouldn't be any surfaces, like 2D surfaces, within the model. In theory, the model should be a single skin thick all the way around, and you should be able to fill it with water and not have any leak out, if you want to visualize it that way. Imagine the whole thing's made of paper. You don't want any seams that allow leakage. I'm not explaining it well, but you know, you get the gist. You want the thing to be solid. All right, and we've got the spacer. See, a lot of these pieces, because I've made 4 of these models now, I know they're tried and true. I just took them off of other engines. So the only stuff that's really potentially going to have a problem is something like this. It's a new smoke box, so I've never tested this. Again, this is something I'm going to sand pretty heavily. You'll notice too that there's this like kind of seam here for some reason. That's because for some reason Ultimaker does not recognize that as an actual hole in the model if I don't put that seam there. So so essentially that's not really a hole. That's just, you know, because it connects to the outside of the model. It's recognizing, you know, it's the equivalent of if you made a big U shape, right? It wouldn't fill in the middle of the U. But if you make an O, it fills in the middle of the O. So this is a U, essentially. Even though once it's printed, you're barely going to notice that seam, and it's going to behave more as an O. It's just a glitch that I haven't been able to get around any other way. It's pretty quick. I've gotten pretty quick at just adding seam lines to things and printing them that way. Again, that's a janky way of doing it. I'm sure there's a better way. There's something in the settings maybe, but I just haven't bothered. Because, you know, it's like, if I turn this into a college course, then, you know, I'm just going to get frustrated and stop doing it. You know, and I would like to learn more, but at the same time, I don't want to overwhelm myself. You know, it's a fine line between doing those two things. So let's make sure we got everything. We got his body, boiler, chassis, the front of the chassis, the rear chassis, the dome, the funnel, faceplate, pony wheel, the spacer, the smoke box. I think that's everything, because the driving wheels are coming off of an existing engine. I haven't decided who yet, but they're just normal wooden railway wheels. I'm going to pop off one end, then slide it through, and then pop it back on the axle. That's what I've been doing. Same thing with the magnets. Let me just make certain. I did add magnet holes, right? Yeah, so it'll go in there. All right, so that's it then. Yeah, so let me just make sure I save this. I'm pretty sure I saved it in this form, but I just want to make sure. because there's always a chance I saved it like while I was, while half of the parts were deleted and then everything's gone. So I always want to be careful with that sort of thing. But anyway, so I'm going to print this now, see how it comes along. It's going to take all day, because as you saw, I mean, if you want to combine all the hours, I mean, it's like the boiler was like 3 hours or more. Then the smoke box is like 2 hours. It's going to be just consistent printing. I'll probably print most of it today, the rest of it tomorrow, detail it all tomorrow. Typically one of these models takes me about 3 days. So, it's pretty quick. It's a quick turnaround. It used to be 5 days for a cardboard model. Now it takes me 3 days for one of these. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how quickly I can finish Alfred. But yeah. Anyway, so hope this was relatively interesting. It's lengthier than probably my other kind of popping in and talking about a model videos, but also that's because I was actively working on it in real time rather than just showing you. So yeah, we'll see how he comes along, and should be fun.